You turned my studio into a nursery for your kid. Are you out of your mind, Sienna? This is my house. I stared at the pastel-colored walls, the crib, the changing table, all of it replacing cherished art supplies and canvases. My sanctuary, my creative space, had been invaded and transformed without my consent. Sienna stood there, arms crossed, a smirk playing on her lips. Oh, come on, Natalie, it's not like you were using it anyway, and little Olivia needs her own room. My blood boiled. How dare she make decisions about my home, my life? I had raised my son Ethan in this house. I had poured my heart and soul into every brushstroke, every piece of art created within these walls, and now my daughter-in-law had the audacity to dismiss it all. Using it? This is my studio, Sienna. My work, my passion. You had no right to do this without even asking me. I could feel my voice rising, my hands trembling with anger. Sienna rolled her eyes. Passion, please. It's just a hobby, Natalie. It's time you focus on what really matters. Family. Olivia needs her grandmother, and you need to be more involved. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Involved? They barely let me see my granddaughter as it was. Ethan and Sienna only reached out when they needed something like free childcare or a place to stay. I am involved, Sienna, but I also have my own life, my own dreams. You can't just barge in here and take over. Sienna's eyes narrowed. Dreams? At your age? It's time to grow up, Natalie. This house is too big for just you. It's perfect for raising Olivia, and you should be grateful we're keeping you in her life. Grateful? I wanted to scream. This was my home, my sanctuary. And now it felt like a prison, my own family turning against me. Ethan appeared in the doorway, his face a mix of guilt and determination. Mom, we need to talk. Sienna and I have decided it's best for everyone if we move in here permanently. You don't need all this space, and we can help take care of you. Take care of me? I felt like I had been slapped. I was a successful artist, a strong, independent woman. I didn't need to be taken care of, especially not by a son who had become a stranger and a daughter-in-law who viewed me as nothing more than an inconvenience. I looked around the room once more, my eyes settling on a framed picture of Ethan as a child, grinning proudly as he held up a finger painting. My heart ached for the boy he had been, the bond we had shared. But that boy was gone, replaced by a man who had chosen his wife's desires over his own mother's well-being. I realized then that I had to make a choice, too. A choice to fight for myself, for my art, for the life I had built. I turned to face Ethan and Sienna, my voice steady, despite the pain in my heart. No, this is my house, and I won't let you take it from me. I won't let you erase who I am, what I've accomplished. If you can't respect that, then I'm afraid you're no longer welcome here. The room fell silent, the weight of my words hanging in the air. Sienna's face twisted in anger, while Ethan looked shocked, as if he had never considered I would stand up for myself. But I had, and I would continue to do so. For my art, for my independence, for the life I had fought so hard to create, no one, not even my own family, could take that away from me. As I stood there, reeling from the shock of seeing my studio transformed into a nursery, my mind drifted back to the day Ethan first introduced me to Sienna. It was a warm summer afternoon, and they had dropped by unexpectedly, interrupting my work on a new painting. Mom, this is Sienna, my girlfriend, Ethan had said, his arm wrapped around her waist. Sienna, meet my mother, Natalie Holloway. Sienna had given me a once-over, her eyes critical and unimpressed. So you're the famous artist, she said, her tone dripping with condescension. Ethan's told me so much about you and your quaint little house. I had bristled at her words, but for Ethan's sake, I forced a smile. It's lovely to meet you, Sienna. Please come in and make yourself at home. As they stepped inside, Sienna's gaze had wandered over my artwork, her lips curling into a smirk. How charming, she remarked. It's all so outdated, don't you think? I mean, who even buys this kind of art anymore? Ethan had shifted uncomfortably, but said nothing. I, on the other hand, had felt a surge of anger. How dare this woman, this stranger, come into my home and insult my life's work? But I had bitten my tongue, not wanting to cause a scene. Little did I know that this was just the beginning of Sienna's campaign to undermine me at every turn. After their wedding, Ethan and Sienna rarely visited. They were always too busy, too caught up in their own lives to spare a thought for me. The only time they reached out was when Olivia was born, and even then it was a brief, impersonal phone call. "Hey, Mom," Ethan had said, sounding distracted. "Just wanted to let you know that Sienna had the baby, a girl, Olivia. We'll send you some pictures when we can." And that was it. No invitation to come and meet my granddaughter, no offer to bring her over for a visit. It was as if I had ceased to exist in their world, relegated to the role of a distant, inconvenient relative. But I had refused to let it get to me. I threw myself into my art, pouring my heart and soul into every piece. I renovated my studio, creating the perfect space to bring my visions to life. It was my sanctuary, my escape from the pain of Ethan's rejection. And then, out of the blue, Sienna had started showing an interest in my house. She would drop by unannounced, Olivia in tow, and wander through the rooms, making comments about how perfect it would be for raising a child. "You know, Natalie," she had said, her voice dripping with false sweetness, "this house is just too big for one person. It's such a waste of space, and poor little Olivia, she needs a yard to play in, a room of her own. Don't you think it's time you considered downsizing?" I had seen right through her act, but I bit my tongue, not wanting to give her the satisfaction of a reaction. But Sienna was relentless. She started dropping Olivia off more and more often, expecting me to provide free childcare at a moment's notice. "Natalie, I need you to watch Olivia for a few hours," she would say, already halfway out the door. "Ethan and I have plans, and we can't find a sitter. You don't mind, do you?" "Of course you don't. What else do you have to do?" I would grit my teeth and take Olivia, but inside I was seething. How dare Sienna treat me like a convenient babysitter, disrupting my work and my life without a second thought? But even that paled in comparison to what came next. One day, I returned home from a gallery opening to find Ethan and Sienna's car parked in my driveway. As I stepped inside, I heard the sound of laughter coming from the living room, and there they were, Ethan, Sienna, and Olivia, surrounded by boxes and suitcases. They had moved in, without so much as a word of warning. "Surprise!" Sienna had said, her smile wide and insincere. "We've decided to stay with you for a while, Natalie. Isn't that wonderful? Now you can spend all the time you want with Olivia, and we can be one big, happy family." I had stood there, speechless, as the reality of the situation sank in. My home, my sanctuary, had been invaded, and there was nothing I could do about it. Life with Ethan and Sienna under my roof was a living nightmare. Sienna treated me like a live-in maid, barking orders and demanding I cater to her every whim. "Natalie, Olivia needs her breakfast," she would yell from the living room, not bothering to look up from her phone. "And make sure it's organic, none of that processed junk." I would grit my teeth and head to the kitchen, resentment bubbling up inside me. But what choice did I have? They had invaded my home, and I felt powerless to stop them. Sienna's demands only escalated as the days went by. She expected me to cook, clean, and care for Olivia around the clock, leaving me no time for my art or my own life. "Natalie, the house is a mess," she would screech, gesturing to a single toy on the floor. "How can you expect me to live like this? And where's dinner? Ethan will be home soon, and you know how he gets when he's hungry." I would bite back a retort and get to work, my hands shaking with barely suppressed rage. But even as I cleaned and cooked, I could feel my spirit withering, my passion for life slowly draining away. Ethan, for his part, seemed oblivious to the toll his wife's behavior was taking on me. He would come home from work, kiss Sienna on the cheek, and retreat to the den, leaving me to deal with her demands and insults. "Ethan, your mother is impossible," I would hear Sienna complain through the thin walls. "She's so lazy and ungrateful. We're doing her a favor by being here, and she acts like it's a burden." I wanted to scream, to storm into the room and set them both straight. But I knew it would only make things worse. So I stayed silent, my anger and frustration growing with each passing day. To escape the constant chaos, I started spending more and more time at my studio. It was the only place I felt truly at peace, surrounded by my art and my memories. But even that small comfort was short-lived. One evening, after a particularly grueling day of catering to Sienna's demands, I returned home to find my studio door ajar. My heart racing, I pushed it open, only to be met with a sight that made my blood run cold. The room had been completely transformed, my art supplies and canvases replaced by pastel walls and a crib. "Surprise," Sienna said, appearing behind me with a smug grin. "We thought it was time Olivia had her own room, And your studio was just going to waste. Don't you love it? I stared at her, my mouth agape. My art, my supplies, where are they? Sienna waved a dismissive hand. Oh, I had Ethan throw all that junk out. It was just taking up space and you're not using it anyway. Besides, it's time you focused on what really matters. Family. I felt like I had been punched in the gut. My art, my passion, my very identity, all of it had been erased, thrown away like garbage. Ethan appeared in the doorway, his expression a mix of guilt and determination. Mom, we need to talk. Sienna and I have been thinking, and we've decided it's best if we take over the house permanently. You don't need all this space, and we can take care of you. Take care of me? I wanted to laugh. More like control me, erase me, strip away everything that made me who I was. But as I looked at their faces, so smug and self-assured, I realized that arguing was futile. They had made up their minds, and nothing I said would change that. So I did the only thing I could. I turned and walked away, my heart breaking with every step. I had lost my home, my art, and now it seemed my very sense of self. But even as despair threatened to overwhelm me, a small spark of anger flickered to life in my chest. They may have taken everything from me, but I refused to let them break me. Somehow, someway, I would find a way to reclaim my life and make them pay for what they had done. I stormed out of the house, my heart pounding with rage and disbelief. How could they do this to me? My own son and his wife, treating me like a servant in my own home, destroying the one thing that brought me joy and purpose. I walked for hours, my feet carrying me aimlessly through the streets. I had nowhere to go, no one to turn to. My entire life had been upended, and I felt lost and alone. As the sun began to set, I found myself standing outside a familiar door. It was the home of my oldest friend, Laura, a successful lawyer who had always been there for me through thick and thin. I hesitated for a moment, my pride warring with my desperation. But as I raised my hand to knock, the door swung open, and Laura stood there, her eyes wide with concern. Natalie? What's wrong? You look like you've seen a ghost. I opened my mouth to speak, but no words came out. Instead, a sob tore from my throat, and I collapsed into her arms, my body shaking with grief and exhaustion. Laura held me as I cried, stroking my hair and murmuring words of comfort. When I finally pulled away, she led me inside and sat me down on the couch, pressing a mug of hot tea into my hands. Tell me everything, she said, her voice gentle but firm, and so I did. I told her about Sienna's cruelty, about Ethan's betrayal, about the destruction of my studio and the theft of my home. I poured out all the pain and anger I had been holding inside, my words tumbling over each other in a rush of emotion. When I finished, Laura was silent for a long moment, her brow furrowed in thought. Then she leaned forward, her eyes blazing with determination. Natalie, listen to me. What they did to you is unforgivable, but you can't let them win. You have to fight back. I shook my head, my voice trembling. How? They've taken everything from me. I have nothing left. Laura smiled, a fierce, predatory grin that sent a shiver down my spine. That's where you're wrong. You have the law on your side. She stood up and walked over to her desk, rifling through a stack of papers. I've been doing some research, and I think I've found a way to get your house back. Legally, they have no right to be there without your consent. My heart leapt with hope, but I quickly tamped it down. But Ethan, he's my son. I can't just kick him out on the street. Laura's expression softened, but her voice remained firm. Natalie, I know you love your son, but he made his choice when he sided with Sienna over you. He needs to face the consequences of his actions. She handed me a sheaf of papers, her eyes glinting with determination. Sign these, and we can start the process of evicting them from your home. It won't be easy, but I'll be with you every step of the way. I stared at the papers, my hands shaking. Could I really do this? Could I turn against my own flesh and blood, even after everything they had done to me? But as I thought of Sienna's smug face, of the callous way she had destroyed my studio and my life, I felt a surge of anger and resolve. They had brought this on themselves, and I refused to be a victim any longer. I took the pen from Laura's hand and signed my name with a flourish. Let's do this, I said, my voice steady and strong. Laura grinned, her eyes sparkling with mischief. That's the Natalie I know and love. Watch out, Sienna and Ethan. The tables are about to turn. As I left Laura's house that night, I felt a sense of purpose and determination that I hadn't felt in years. I may have lost my home and my family, but I refused to lose myself. I would fight for what was mine, and I would make them pay for what they had done. One way or another, justice would be served. The next morning, I woke up on Laura's couch, my body stiff and sore from the unfamiliar sleeping arrangements. But as I stretched and yawned, I felt a renewed sense of purpose and determination. I was done being a doormat, done letting Sienna and Ethan walk all over me. It was time to take back what was mine. I showered and dressed quickly, then headed into the kitchen where Laura was already waiting, a cup of coffee in hand. "You ready for this?" she asked, her eyes searching my face. I nodded, my jaw set with resolve. "More than ready. Let's do this." We drove to my house in silence, the weight of what we were about to do hanging heavy in the air. As we pulled up to the curb, I saw Ethan's car in the driveway, and my stomach clenched with nerves. But I pushed through the fear, marching up to the front door with Laura by my side. I took a deep breath and rang the doorbell, my heart pounding in my chest. A moment later, the door swung open, and Sienna stood there, her face twisted with annoyance. "What do you want?" she snapped, her eyes narrowing as she saw Laura. I stepped forward, my voice steady and calm. "I want my house back, Sienna, and I want you and Ethan out of it, today." Sienna laughed, a harsh, grating sound that set my teeth on edge. "Are you serious? This is our home now, Natalie? You signed it over to us, remember?" I shook my head, a small smile playing at the corners of my mouth. "That's where you're wrong, Sienna. I never signed anything. This house is still legally mine, and you have no right to be here without my consent." Sienna's face paled, and she took a step back, her eyes darting to Ethan, who had appeared behind her, his expression wary and uncertain. "Mom, what's going on?" he asked, his voice hesitant. I turned to him, my heart breaking even as I spoke the words. "I'm sorry, Ethan, but I can't let you and Sienna continue to treat me this way. You need to leave, both of you. Now." Ethan's face crumpled, and for a moment I saw a flicker of the little boy he had once been, the one who had loved me unconditionally. But then his expression hardened, and he shook his head. "We're not going anywhere, Mom. This is our home now, and you can't make us leave." Laura stepped forward, her voice cold and professional. "Actually, she can. I have a court order here that says you and Sienna are to vacate the premises immediately. If you refuse, we'll have no choice but to call the police." Sienna's face twisted with rage, and she lunged forward, her hands clawed like talons. "You bitch!" she screeched, her voice shrill and ugly. "You can't do this to us. We're family." I stepped back, my heart hammering in my chest. But Laura was already moving, placing herself between me and Sienna like a human shield. "Family doesn't treat each other the way you've treated Natalie," she said, her voice like steel. "Now, are you going to leave peacefully, or do I need to make that call?" For a long, tense moment, no one moved. Then Ethan's shoulders slumped, and he turned to Sienna, his voice low and defeated. "Come on, Sienna, let's just go. It's not worth it." Sienna's face contorted with fury, but she allowed Ethan to lead her away, slamming the door behind them with a final vicious curse. I stood there, my legs shaking beneath me, as the reality of what had just happened began to sink in. I had done it. I had taken back my home, my life, my dignity. But even as relief washed over me, I felt a pang of sadness for what I had lost. My son, my grandchild, the family I had once dreamed of having. Laura's hand on my shoulder brought me back to the present, and I turned to her, my eyes brimming with tears. "Thank you," I whispered, my voice choked with emotion. "I couldn't have done this without you." Laura smiled, her eyes soft with understanding. "That's what friends are for, Natalie. Now let's get this place cleaned up and start putting your life back together. One step at a time." As we set to work, clearing out the remnants of Sienna and Ethan's brief occupation, I felt a sense of hope and possibility that I hadn't felt in years. I may have lost my family, but I had found myself again. And that was worth more than any house or studio could ever be. The days turned into weeks, and the weeks into months. I threw myself into my art, pouring all my pain and anger onto the canvas. But even as I lost myself in the work, I couldn't shake the sense of loss and betrayal that haunted me. Ethan and Sienna had taken more than just my home and my studio. They had taken my sense of family, my belief in the goodness of people, and I didn't know how to get that back. I stopped answering calls and emails, stopped leaving the house except for the most necessary errands. I became a ghost in my own life, haunting the rooms of my empty house like a specter. But then one day, everything changed. I was in the kitchen making a cup of tea when the doorbell rang. I froze, my heart pounding in my chest. I wasn't expecting anyone, and the thought of facing another human being filled me with dread. But something compelled me to answer the door, some deep-seated instinct that told me this was important. I opened the door to find Laura standing there, her face grave and serious. "Natalie, we need to talk." I stepped aside to let her in, my stomach churning with nerves. "What's going on?" Laura sat down at the kitchen table, her hands clasped in front of her. "I've been doing some digging into Ethan and Sienna's finances, and I found something that I think you need to see." She slid a folder across the table, and I opened it with trembling fingers. Inside were bank statements, credit card bills, and legal documents, all painting a picture of financial ruin and desperation. "They're broke, Natalie. Completely and utterly broke. They've been living off credit cards and loans for months, ever since Ethan lost his job, and now they're drowning in debt, with no way out." I stared at the papers, my mind reeling. But how? They always seemed so successful, so put together. Laura shook her head, her eyes sad. "It was all a facade, Natalie. They were living beyond their means, trying to keep up appearances, and now it's all come crashing down around them." I felt a surge of anger and bitterness. Good, they deserve it after what they did to me. But even as I said the words, I felt a pang of guilt. Ethan was still my son, no matter what he had done. And the thought of him suffering, of my granddaughter living in poverty, made my heart ache. Laura leaned forward, her eyes intense. "Natalie, I know you're still hurting, but this is your chance to be the bigger person, to show them what real love and forgiveness look like." I shook my head, my eyes filling with tears. "I don't know if I can, Laura. They hurt me so badly. I don't know if I can ever trust them again." Laura reached out and took my hand, her touch warm and comforting. "You don't have to trust them, Natalie, but you can choose to let go of the anger and the pain. You can choose to move forward, to build a new life for yourself, one that isn't defined by what they did to you." I sat there for a long moment, letting her words sink in. She was right. I had been holding on to my anger and my bitterness for so long, letting it consume me. But what good had it done? It hadn't changed what had happened, hadn't made me feel any better. Maybe it was time to let go. To forgive, not for their sake, but for my own. I took a deep breath and nodded, my voice shaking. "Okay, I'll try." Laura smiled, her eyes shining with pride. "That's all anyone can ask, Natalie, and I'll be here for you every step of the way." As she left that day, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. I knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, that there would be setbacks and challenges along the way. But for the first time in a long time, I felt a sense of hope, a belief that maybe, just maybe, I could find my way back to the person I used to be. The person who believed in love and family and the goodness of people. And that was a start. A few days later, I found myself standing outside Ethan and Sienna's apartment building, my heart pounding in my chest. Laura had arranged for us to meet with them to try and find a way forward, but as I climbed the stairs to their unit, I couldn't shake the sense of dread that filled me. What if they didn't want to see me? What if they blamed me for their financial troubles? I took a deep breath and knocked on the door, my hand shaking slightly. A moment later it swung open to reveal Ethan, his face haggard and drawn. "Mom," he said, his voice flat and emotionless. "What are you doing here?" I swallowed hard, trying to find the right words. I heard about your financial troubles, and I wanted to see if there was anything I could do to help." Ethan's face twisted with anger, and he stepped back, his arms crossed over his chest. "Oh, so now you want to help? After you kicked us out of our home and left us with nothing?" I flinched at his words, but I forced myself to stay calm. "Ethan, I know you're angry, and you have every right to be, but I'm here because I care about you, and I don't want to see you suffer." Sienna appeared behind him, her face hard and cold. "Suffer? We're already suffering, thanks to you. You ruined our lives, Natalie, and now you have the nerve to show up here and pretend like you care?" I felt a surge of anger, but I pushed it down. "I'm not pretending, Sienna. I do care, and I want to make things right." Laura stepped forward, her voice calm and professional. Ethan, Sienna, I know this is a difficult situation, but we're here to help. Natalie has offered to provide financial assistance to help you get back on your feet. Ethan's eyes widened, and for a moment I saw a flicker of hope in his face, but then his expression hardened, and he shook his head. We don't need your charity, Mom. We'll figure this out on our own. Sienna nodded, her lips curled in a sneer. That's right. We don't need anything from you, not after what you did to us. I felt my heart sink, but I refused to give up. Please, Ethan, I know I made mistakes, I know I hurt you, but I'm trying to make things right. I'm trying to be there for you, the way a mother should. Ethan's face softened, and for a moment I thought he might relent. But then Sienna stepped forward, her eyes blazing with fury. You're not his mother anymore, Natalie. You lost that right when you betrayed us, when you chose your precious art over your own family. I felt like I had been slapped, but I forced myself to stay calm, to keep my voice steady. Sienna, I know you're angry, but please don't punish Olivia for my mistakes. She needs her father and she needs a stable home. Let me help you, for her sake, if not for your own. Sienna's face twisted with rage, and she stepped forward, her finger jabbing into my chest. Don't you dare use Olivia against us. We're her parents, not you, and we'll decide what's best for her. Ethan put a hand on her arm, his voice low and warning. Sienna, calm down. This isn't helping. But Sienna shook him off, her eyes never leaving mine. No, Ethan, I'm done playing nice. I'm done pretending like everything is okay. Your mother is a selfish, manipulative bitch, and I won't let her anywhere near our daughter. I felt like the wind had been knocked out of me, but I forced myself to stand my ground to keep my voice steady. I'm sorry you feel that way, Sienna, but I'm not going anywhere. I'm Olivia's grandmother, and I will always be a part of her life, whether you like it or not. Sienna's face contorted with fury, and for a moment I thought she might strike me. But then Ethan stepped between us, his voice hard and cold. I think you should go, Mom. We'll handle this on our own. I felt my heart break, but I nodded, my eyes filling with tears. Okay, Ethan, if that's what you want, but know that I'm here for you, always, and I love you, no matter what. As Laura and I walked away, I felt a sense of defeat and despair. I had tried to make things right, to be the bigger person, but it seemed like it was too little, too late. But even as I felt the weight of my failures pressing down on me, I knew I couldn't give up. I had to keep trying, to keep fighting for my family, no matter how long it took or how much it hurt, because that's what love was, and that's what I had to believe in, even when everything else seemed lost. A year passed, and life went on. I threw myself into my art, channeling all my pain and anger into my work, and slowly, gradually, I started to heal. I heard snippets of news about Ethan and Sienna through the grapevine. Their marriage was crumbling, torn apart by financial strain and Sienna's refusal to work. Ethan was drowning in debt, barely able to keep a roof over their heads. Part of me felt a twisted sense of satisfaction. They had brought this on themselves, with their greed and entitlement. But another part of me ached for my son, for the little boy he had once been. And then one day, the phone rang. It was Ethan, his voice small and broken. Mom, he said, his words slurred and heavy. I need your help, please. I hesitated, my heart torn between anger and compassion. But in the end, I couldn't turn him away. He was my son, and I loved him no matter what. I drove to his apartment, my stomach churning with nerves. When I knocked on the door, it swung open to reveal Ethan, his face gaunt and haggard. Mom, he said, his eyes filling with tears. I'm so sorry for everything. I stepped inside, my heart breaking at the sight of their tiny, cramped apartment. Olivia was nowhere to be seen, and Sienna was passed out on the couch, a bottle of vodka clutched in her hand. Ethan, I said, my voice gentle but firm. What's going on? He collapsed into a chair, his head in his hands. I can't do this anymore, Mom. The debt, the fighting, the constant stress, it's killing me. I sat down beside him, my hand on his shoulder. I'm here for you, Ethan, but I can't fix this for you. You need to take responsibility for your actions, for the choices you've made. He looked up at me, his eyes pleading. I know, Mom, and I will. But I need your help. I need to get away from Sienna, to start over. Can Olivia and I stay with you, just for a little while? I hesitated, my mind racing with doubts and fears. But in the end, I knew I couldn't turn him away. not when he needed me the most. "Of course," I said, my voice soft and tender. "You're always welcome in my home, Ethan. Both of you." He hugged me then, his body shaking with sobs, and for a moment I felt like I had my little boy back, the one who had always run to me for comfort and love. But as I helped him pack his bags and gather Olivia's things, I couldn't shake the sense of unease that filled me. Sienna was still passed out on the couch, oblivious to the world around her, and I knew that when she woke up, there would be hell to pay. We were just about to leave when she stirred, her eyes blinking open in confusion. "Ethan?" she mumbled, her words slurred and heavy. "Where are you going?" Ethan froze, his face pale and drawn. "I'm leaving, Sienna. I can't do this anymore. I'm taking Olivia, and we're going to stay with my mom for a while." Sienna struggled to her feet, her face twisted with rage. "Like hell you are," she snarled, her eyes flashing with fury. "You're not taking my daughter anywhere, you worthless piece of shit." I stepped between them, my voice calm but firm. "Sienna, please. This isn't good for Olivia. She needs stability and love. And right now, Ethan can provide that for her." Sienna laughed, a harsh, grating sound that set my teeth on edge. "Love? You don't know the first thing about love, you selfish bitch. You're just trying to steal my family, to turn them against me." I shook my head, my heart heavy with sadness. "No, Sienna. I'm trying to help them, to give them a chance at a better life. But I can't do that if you won't let me." She lunged at me then, her hands clawed and scratching. But Ethan pulled her back, his voice hard and cold. "Enough, Sienna. We're leaving, and that's final. You can either accept it, or you can fight it. But either way, it's happening." Sienna collapsed to the floor, her body shaking with sobs. And as we walked out the door, Olivia clutched tight in Ethan's arms, body. I couldn't help but feel a pang of pity for her. She had lost everything, just like I had. But unlike me, she had no one to turn to, no one to help her pick up the pieces. And as we drove away, the city lights fading in the rearview mirror, I knew that our journey was far from over. There would be challenges ahead, obstacles to overcome. But for now we were together, and that was enough.